name is Ethan Miller, and last summer I needed a job. Badly. College textbooks weren't getting any cheaper, and my beat up 2003 Civic was threatening to disintegrate every time I turned the key. I was 19, back in my sleepy hometown of Harmony Creek, Ohio, for the summer, and the prospect of 3 months of my mom's meatloaf and reruns of old sitcoms was, frankly, terrifying in its own right. So, I scoured the local classifieds, which in Harmony Creek mostly consisted of help-wanted dishwasher at Dinah's Diner, or lawn care specialist must-own mower. Then, tucked between an ad for a lost cat and another for a Tupperware party, I saw it summer staff needed! Paradise Falls Water Park! Competitive pay! Fun in the sun. Paradise Falls. It had been a local legend since before I was born. Built in the late 80s. It was one of those sprawling, slightly too ambitious attractions for a town our size. It had seen better days, sure. The paint on the giant fiberglass parrot at the entrance was peeling, and a couple of the smaller slides had been roped off for years. But it was still the place to be for kids in the summer, and the pay was rumored to be a couple of bucks above minimum wage, which was practically a king's ransom to me. The application process was surprisingly quick. I filled out a form online, got a call the next day for an interview, and found myself sitting in a surprisingly chilly, windowless office at the back of the park the following afternoon. The interviewer was a man named Mr. Abernathy. He was older, with a deeply lined face, tired eyes, and a smile that didn't quite reach them. He wore a faded Paradise Falls polo shirt, a size too big, and smelled faintly of chlorine and something else, something vaguely metallic, like old pennies. "Ethan, is it?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "Yes, sir." He glanced at my application for all of 2 seconds. "Ever worked at a water park before?" "No, sir, but I'm a fast learner, and I'm a strong swimmer." I conveniently left out the part where my main swimming experience was doggy, paddling in the community pool. "Good. Enthusiasm. We like that." He leaned back, his chair creaking ominously. "The park, it has its quirks. It's an old park. Things don't always work the way they should. You need to be able to follow instructions." "Precisely. Can you do that?" "Absolutely," I said, trying to sound confident. "Excellent." He pushed a laminated card across the desk. "Orientation is Monday, 7 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." And Ethan, he paused, his gaze sharpening. "Welcome to Paradise Falls. We hope you survive the summer." He chuckled in a dry, rasping sound like leaves skittering across concrete. I forced a laugh too, assuming it was some kind of corny water park-themed joke. Looking back, I don't think he was joking at all. Monday morning arrived way too early. I pulled into the mostly empty employee parking lot, the massive, brightly colored slides of Paradise Falls looming like sleeping giants in the pre-dawn gloom. There were about 10 of us new recruits, mostly kids my age, all looking equally bleary-eyed and apprehensive. A perky, overly enthusiastic woman named Brenda, who looked like she'd mainlined 6 espressos, herded us into the staff cafeteria. The place smelled of stale popcorn and sunscreen. After a whirlwind tour of the park, the Kiddie Lagoon, the Wave Rider, pool, the towering Neptune's Plunge, and the ominously named Blackout Tunnel, we were sat down for the important stuff. That's when Mr. Abernathy reappeared, carrying a surprisingly thick ring-bound binder. The perky smile on Brenda's face faltered slightly when he entered. "All right, listen up," Abernathy began, his voice cutting through the morning quiet. "Paradise Falls is a fun place. We want our guests to have a good time. We want you to have a good time." He didn't sound convinced, but safety is our #1 priority, and to ensure that we have rules you will follow. Without question, without deviation, your lives and the lives of our guests could depend on it. A nervous ripple went through the room. This was a bit more intense than the "don't run by the poolside" speech I was expecting. He opened the binder. "These rules are specific to Paradise Falls. You won't find them in any standard lifeguard manual. Some of them might seem odd. Ignore that feeling. They are in place for a reason. A very good reason." He began to read. "Rule I-1, standard operating procedures must be followed at all times. This includes uniform code, designated break times, and proper use of equipment. This is your baseline. Never forget the baseline. Okay, standard enough. I could handle that. Rule of A28. The cursed current lazy river is to be cleared of all guests by 700 p.m. No staff member is to enter the water of the cursed current for any reason after 7:05 p.m. If a guest's personal item falls in after this time, it is lost. Do not attempt retrieval. The current changes. A few of us exchanged glances. Cursed current. Sounded like cheesy park branding. But the way Abernathy said, changes, sent a little shiver down my spine. Rule A3. The filtration and pump room for Neptune's plunge. Sector Gamut is strictly off limits to all junior staff. Access is restricted to Level 3 senior maintenance only. If you hear any noises resembling speech or whispers emanating from the pump room, particularly during off hours or when the slide is non-operational, you are to evacuate the immediate vicinity and report it to park security. Do not investigate. Do not attempt to communicate. Whispers from a pump room. Now we were definitely in weird territory. I saw a girl named Sarah, who I chatted with briefly, raise a skeptical eyebrow. Rule, Wine4E, Captain Splash, the park mascot, is only to be interacted with when he is accompanied by his designated handler during official park hours, 9 a.m., 6 p.m. If you encounter Captain Splash wandering the park alone, especially after closing or before opening, do not approach. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak to him. Vacate the area immediately and report the sighting. He is not himself at those times. Captain Splash was a giant, goofy-looking pelican with oversized feet and a fixed, manic grin. The idea of him being not himself was more unsettling than I cared to admit. What did that even mean? Rule Quaint Phoebe if, during your shift, particularly during evening hours or inclement weather, the main park lights flicker exactly 3 times in rapid succession, followed by a 5-second pause, and then a single, longer flicker. This is a code Nightingale. Immediately seek shelter in the nearest designated safe room, marked on your park maps. Lock the door. Do not open it for any reason for a minimum of 30 minutes, or until you hear the all clear, signal 3 short blasts from the park's main horn. Ignore any sounds from outside the safe room, including voices you recognize. My heart was starting to thump a little faster. This was sounding less like a summer job and more like a survival guide for a horror movie. Rule Hey 6E. The Lost Kids Choral is for lost children only. If you find an adult in the Lost Kids Choral, particularly one who seems distressed or confused, but cannot or will not state their name or who they are looking for, do not engage. Alert security. Do not, under any circumstances, touch them or attempt to lead them out yourself. They are not who they appear to be. Rule 2070 at closing time. Ensure all personal belongings are removed from lockers. Anything left overnight in employee lockers in Zone Delta near the blackout tunnel is considered forfeit. Do not attempt to retrieve items left after midnight. The cleaning crew in that sector is thorough. The emphasis he put on thorough was chilling. Rule easily. If you are assigned to the Wave Rider pool and observe a patch of water significantly darker than the surrounding area, roughly circular, and approximately 10 feet in diameter, that does not dissipate with the wave cycles, evacuate the pool immediately using Emergency Protocol B. Do not draw attention to the dark patch. Do not point at it. Report a blue algae bloom to control. We will handle it. Blue algae bloom. That sounded like a very specific euphemism. Rule by 90: never, under any circumstances, consume any food or drink offered to you by a guest if you are working the late shift after 5 p.m. especially near the older western section of the park, sometimes referred to by senior staff as the Sunken Gardens. Politely decline. Always. Rule Fayhully the Large. Red emergency shut. Off valve located behind the concession stand near Pirates Peak is not for the slides. Do not touch it unless explicitly ordered to do so by Mr. Abernathy himself, and only if he provides the daily counter phrase. Attempting to use it otherwise will have catastrophic consequences. What could be worse than whatever emergency it was supposed to stop? Abernathy closed the binder with a decisive thud. The room was silent, save for the hum of the ancient air conditioner. These are your primary operational directives, he said, his gaze sweeping over our pale faces. There are others, more specific to certain roles, which your direct supervisors will cover. Memorize them. Live by them. Any questions? My mind was reeling. This was insane. It had to be some kind of elaborate hazing ritual for new employees, right? To see who would freak out and quit on day one. I glanced at Sarah again. Her face was a mixture of disbelief and a dawning unease that mirrored my own. A guy in front of me, built like a linebacker, was actually sweating. "Sir," a tentative voice piped up. It was a skinny kid with glasses named Kevin. Are these for real? Like the mascot thing. Abernathy's expression didn't change. Every rule in this book, Mr. Davies, is born from experience. Often tragic experience. Do you wish to become a footnote in next year's revision? Kevin swallowed hard and shook his head, sinking back into his chair. No one else asked any questions. The rest of the orientation was a blur of paperwork, uniform assignments, itchy polyester shirts and shorts that were definitely not designed for fun in the sun, and scheduling. I was assigned to general duties, which meant I'd be rotating between cleaning, ride attendance, and guest services. My first shift was the next day, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. As we were dismissed, I walked out into the bright morning sun, the garish colors of Paradise Falls, suddenly seeming less cheerful and more menacing. The rules echoed in my head. It had to be a joke. An incredibly elaborate, creepy joke. But then I remembered Mr. Abernathy's eyes, the dead seriousness in his voice, the faint, metallic scent that clung to him. And I remembered his parting words from the interview. "We hope you survive the summer." I needed the money. I told myself that as I walked to my car. I'd just keep my head down, follow the stupid rules, and get through it. How bad could it really be? It was just a water park, right? My first actual shift at Paradise Falls was deceptively normal, almost boring. The sun blazed, kids shrieked with delight as they barreled down the tropical typhoon, slides, and the air smelled overwhelmingly of chlorine and cheap pizza from the Surf Shack concession stand. I spent most of the morning picking up discarded towels and half-eaten churros, occasionally rotating to the entrance of the Kiddie Lagoon, reminding overzealous parents that yes, their little Timmy did indeed need a swim diaper. The rules, those bizarre, unsettling commandments from Mr. Abernathy's binder, felt distant, like a weird dream I'd had. Sarah, the girl from orientation, was assigned to the gift shop, and during our shared 15-minute break, we huddled by the overflowing trash cans behind the Wave Rider control booth. So I started, trying to sound casual, or any rogue pelicans or whispering pump rooms yet. Sarah snorted, fanning herself with a park map. Not a peep. Honestly, Ethan, I think Abernathy was just trying to scare the newbies. Standard hazing. My older brother worked at a theme park in Sandusky, and they made him think the animatronic pirate captain was haunted for a week.
Yeah, maybe.
I said, though a knot of unease remained in my stomach. Still, some of those rules were specific. The current changes. She mimicked in a low, gravelly voice, then giggled. Come on, it's a lazy river, not the river Styx. I wanted to believe her. I really did. The afternoon shift dragged. I was tasked with tube management at the base of the Serpent's Coil. Slides basically, untangling the mess of brightly colored inflatable rings and directing guests. It was hot, repetitive work, and the constant, high-pitched screaming from the slide exits was starting to give me a headache. Around 4:30 p.m., I got my first taste of weirdness. I was stacking a pile of double rider tubes when I noticed a kid, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing alone near the edge of the Lost Kids Coral. The coral was a fenced-off area with a few plastic toadstool seats and a faded mural of smiling cartoon sea creatures. He wasn't crying, just staring blankly at the fence. "Hey there, little buddy," I said, approaching him cautiously. "You lost? Looking for your mom or dad?" He didn't respond, just kept staring. His eyes were a weird pale blue, almost translucent. "What's your name?" I tried again, crouching down to his level. Silence. He had a small, red toy boat clutched in one hand. Okay, this was a bit off. I remembered Rule 86, the Lost Kids Coral is for lost children only. If you find an adult in the Lost Kids Coral, this was a kid though, but something felt wrong. All right, hang tight. I said, forcing a smile. I'll go get someone from guest services. We'll find your folks in no time. I turned to flag down Brenda, who was walking past with a clipboard, when I heard a faint, raspy whisper, "Not lost." Waiting. I spun back around. The kid hadn't moved. His lips hadn't twitched. "Did you say something?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. He just blinked slowly. My radio crackled. It was my supervisor, a perpetually stressed guy named Gary. "Miller, you on tube duty or sightseeing? Get those tubes sorted pronto." "Right on it," I mumbled, glancing back at the kid. He was still there, still staring. I made a mental note to tell Brenda about him as soon as Gary was off my back. By the time I'd wrangled another dozen tubes and looked back, the kid was gone. The lost kid's coral was empty. I told myself he'd probably just wandered off, or his parents had found him. But the whisper, I couldn't shake it. The rest of the day passed in a haze of sunscreen and chlorine. As 600 p.m. approached, the park began to empty. The energy shifted. The joyful chaos of the day gave way to a kind of wary quiet, punctuated by the distant gurgle of water pumps and the clatter of staff cleaning crews. My last task was to help clear the cursed current. Lazy River. It was just me and another new guy, Mark, the linebacker type from orientation, who'd been sweating bullets during Abernathy's speech. "You believe that crap about the current changing?" Mark muttered as we herded the last few stragglers out of the water, their inflatable tubes bumping gently against the concrete edges. "No idea," I said, but Abernathy seemed pretty serious. "Dude, he's just messing with us. Old guys like that get their kicks scaring teenagers." Mark pointed to a bright pink flamingo float that had gotten snagged on a decorative rock near the edge. "Look, someone left their bird. It's 6:58 p.m. Technically, after 7:05, we can't go in, right?" "Rule 5-2, I confirmed a little uneasily. If a guest's personal item falls in after this time, it is lost. Do not attempt retrieval." "Exactly. So, if I just oops..." Mark accidentally nudged the flamingo with his foot. It bobbed further out into the slow-moving water. "My bad. Guess it's lost forever after 7:05. He winked. We finished our sweep, making sure all the entry and exit gates to the lazy river were locked. The big clock near the main plaza read 7:03 p.m. "See." "Nothing," Mark said, gesturing to the placid water. The setting sun cast long, eerie shadows across the surface. The usual gentle gurgle of the current seemed quieter. Or maybe it was just my imagination. "Let's just head to the locker room," I said, not wanting to push our luck. As we walked away, I glanced back. The pink flamingo float was still there, drifting slowly, but the water around it looked darker. Not like a shadow, but like the water itself was a different, murkier color. And it wasn't just around the flamingo anymore. The darker patch was spreading, slowly, like ink dropped into a glass. The gentle current also seemed to be picking up speed, but not in a uniform way. It looked like it was swirling, pulling towards the center of the lazy river, where the water was now almost black. "Mark," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Look." He turned. His bravado vanished. "What the hell?" The pink flamingo, caught in the accelerating, darkening current, began to spin. Faster and faster. And then, with a soft, sickening sloop, it was pulled under. Not deflated, not tipped over. Pulled straight down, as if by an unseen hand. For a second, there was just a dark swirl on the surface, and then nothing. The water slowly returned to its normal, placid blue, the current to its gentle pace. The clock read 7:06 p.m. Mark and I stared at each other, faces pale. "Okay," he said, his voice an octave higher than usual. Maybe Abernathy wasn't kidding. We didn't talk on the way to the locker room in Zone Delta, near the blackout tunnel. The locker room was old, damp, and smelled of mildew. The flickering fluorescent lights didn't help the atmosphere. I fumbled with my combination lock, my hand still shaking slightly from the lazy river incident. I remembered Rule 7. Anything left overnight in employee lockers in Zone Delta is considered forfeit. The cleaning crew in that sector is thorough. I made damn sure I had everything: my wallet, my keys, my half-eaten sandwich I'd forgotten about. Mark was doing the same, practically emptying his locker onto the bench. As I was about to leave, I noticed something on the floor under the last row of lockers. It was a small, red toy boat, identical to the one the kid in the Lost Kids choral had been holding. My blood ran cold. How did it get here? Had he been in the locker room? I picked it up. It felt oddly cold to the touch. Geez, you see this? I asked Mark and Kevin, the skinny kid with glasses from orientation who had just walked in. Kevin peered at it. Creepy. Someone forget their kid's toy. Maybe, I said, but I didn't believe it. I didn't want to leave it there, but the thought of taking it with me, of it being mine now, was even worse. In Rule Phase 7, the cleaning crew is thorough, Mark muttered, echoing my thoughts. He looked genuinely scared now. I hesitated, then carefully placed the little red boat back on the floor, tucking it slightly under the locker. Maybe the thorough cleaning crew would just get rid of it. The walk to the employee parking lot felt miles long. Every shadow seemed to stretch. Every rustle of leaves sounded like footsteps. The brightly colored slides, now silhouetted against the darkening twilight sky, looked less like fun attractions and more like grotesque alien structures. I got into my Civic, the engine thankfully catching on the first try. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw Mr. Abernathy standing near the park entrance, watching the last few employees leave. He wasn't smiling. He just watched, his face like a stone carving in the gloom. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod as I drove past. It wasn't a friendly gesture. It felt more like an acknowledgement. You made it through day one. Let's see about day two. I drove home faster than I should have. The rules, the kid, the lazy river, the toy boat, all swirling in my head. Sarah was wrong. This wasn't hazing. This was real. And I had a whole summer of it ahead of me. The next few weeks at Paradise Falls settled into a disturbing rhythm. The days were a monotonous blur of screaming children, sticky popsicle wrappers, and the ever-present smell of chlorine. But beneath the surface of mundane summer, job drudgery, a current of fear, cold and strong, tugged at me constantly. The rules weren't just words in a binder anymore. They were living, breathing things, shadows that danced at the periphery of my vision. I started seeing things, or maybe I was just imagining them. A flicker of movement in the dense foliage near the sunken gardens. It's a rule pate 90. Never consume any food or drink offered to you by a guest, especially near the older western section. When I was sure no one was there, the way the water in the Web Rider pool sometimes seemed to bulge unnaturally in the deep end, even when the wave machine was off, Rule A8. Will a patch of water significantly darker that does not dissipate evacuate the pool immediately? I never saw the 10-foot dark circle Abernathy described, but I saw ripples, unsettling, oily ripples. Mark, after the Flamingo incident, became my reluctant confidant in paranoia. We'd exchange nervous glances whenever something felt off. Kevin, on the other hand, seemed to be trying his best to ignore it all, whistling cheerfully even when tasked with cleaning the suspiciously stained grout in the Zone Delta locker room showers. Sarah remained skeptical, though even she admitted the story about the lazy river was super creepy. She'd taken to calling Mr. Abernathy Old Man Creepshow. One sweltering afternoon, I was assigned to patrol the perimeter fence near Sector Gamma, where Neptune's Plunge and its infamous pump room were located. It was a quiet part of the park, overgrown with weeds and smelling faintly of stagnant water and rust. The pump room itself was a squat, windowless concrete bunker, its heavy steel door secured with a thick, rusty padlock. A faded sign read, Denjar Chias Veltigi Ayuchowaza Personal I remembered Rule Bane 3. The filtration and pump room is strictly off limits. If you hear any noises resembling speech or whispers, evacuate. Do not investigate. As I walked past, I heard it. A low, rhythmic thrumming. Not the mechanical hum of a working pump. Neptune's Plunge had been closed for maintenance all week. This was different. It was a sound like a giant heartbeat. And beneath it, almost too faint to discern, a whisper. It wasn't in English or any language I recognized. It was sibilant, drawn out like air leaking from ancient lungs. My own heartbeat hammered against my ribs. Evacuate. Reported. The rule was clear, but a morbid curiosity, The same stupid impulse that makes people slow down for car wrecks rooted me to the spot. I leaned closer, straining to hear. The whispering seemed to get louder, coalescing into something that sounded almost like chanting. Then a sharp crack from inside the pump room, like a thick branch snapping, followed by a wet, dragging sound. That was enough. I wasn't just scared, I was terrified. I practically sprinted back towards the main park area, my radio fumbling in my sweaty palm. Control, this is Miller. I'm at Sector Gamma, near the Neptune's plunge pump room. And I think I heard something, like the rule says. Brenda's overly cheerful voice crackled back, though it sounded a little strained. Understood, Ethan. Just move away from the area, okay? We'll send security to check it out. And good job reporting it. Security in Paradise Falls consisted of two burly, silent men named Earl and Sile who looked like they wrestled bears in their spare time. I saw them heading towards Sector Gamma a few minutes later, their faces grim. They didn't invite me to accompany them, and I didn't offer. Later, I heard from Mark that they just reported, all clear, probably a loose pipe. I knew what I'd heard, and it wasn't a loose pipe. The incident that truly cemented the horror of Paradise Falls, the one that still gives me nightmares, happened about a week later. It was a Thursday, and the park was unusually crowded. Storm clouds had been gathering on the horizon all afternoon, a bruised, purple mass that promised a deluge. The air was thick, heavy, and charged with an almost palpable tension. I was stationed at the top of the Kraken's Revenge, a multi-lane racer slide. My job to ensure kids went down one at a time and didn't try any evil Knievel stunts. Around 3:00 p.m., the sky opened up. It wasn't just rain, it was a torrential downpour, the kind that turns everything gray and blurry in seconds. The park's emergency sirens blared, and staff scrambled to get guests under cover. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, 3 times, rapid succession, a 5-second pause. My breath hitched, then a single longer flicker, plunging the top of the slide tower into near darkness for a moment before the emergency lights stuttered on. Code Nightingale.
Rule 55. Seth Root.
Now, a senior lifeguard I didn't know screamed over the roar of the rain. He was already shoving a group of terrified, soaked teenagers towards the emergency exit stairs. My designated safe room, according to the map Abernathy had made us memorize, was the first aid station near the main entrance. It felt miles away. Panic was a living thing, clawing at my throat. I stumbled down the slippery metal stairs, the rain lashing my face, the wind howling like a banshee. Guests were screaming, running in all directions. Staff members, identifiable by their soaked uniforms, were trying to direct the chaos, their faces pale and strained. I saw Sarah near the surf shack, trying to usher a crying family towards the main gift shop, which was another safe room. Her eyes met mine for a fleeting second, wide with a fear that mirrored my own. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a joke. The first aid station was a small, concrete building. I wrenched the door open and practically fell inside, along with a handful of other employees and a terrified looking mother clutching 2 small children. One of the senior staff, a woman named Maria I'd seen in the break room, slammed the heavy door shut and threw the deadbolt. The sound of the bolt clicking into place was deafeningly final. The room was small, cramped, and smelled of antiseptic and fear. The only light came from a single, battery-powered emergency lantern that cast long, dancing shadows on the walls. 30 minutes, Maria said, her voice tight. Or until the all clear. No one opens that door. Understood. We all nodded mute. The wind shrieked outside, rattling the door in its frame. The rain hammered against the roof like angry fists. Then the other sound started. At first, it was just the storm, but then a scratching. A long, deliberate scratching at the door, like something with very long claws was trying to get in. The mother whimpered, pulling her children closer. Ignore it. Maria hissed, her eyes darting towards the door. It's just the wind. Branches. But it didn't sound like branches. It sounded hungry. Then came the voices. Let us in. It's not safe out here. It sounded like a child, a little girl, her voice distorted by the wind and rain. The mother in the room started to sob. My other baby, I couldn't find her. Don't listen. Maria snapped, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of a metal cabinet.
It's not real.
Please, it's so cold. This time it sounded like an old man, weak and frail. Then, a voice I recognized. Ethan.
Ethan, open the door. It's me, Sarah.
I got separated. Please, let me in. My heart leaped into my throat. Sarah, was she out there? I moved towards the door. Sarah. Ethan? No? Maria grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Rule Plane Phi! Ignore any sounds from outside the safe room, including voices you recognize. Then please, it's right behind me.
Oh, God.
It's got Mark. Sarah's voice choked with terror. Then a scream abruptly cut off, followed by a wet, tearing sound that made my stomach churn. I froze, torn. Was it really Sarah? Or was it something else? The scratching at the door intensified, frenzied. The 30 minutes felt like 30 years. The sounds outside continued, pleading, screaming, horrible, unidentifiable noises that seemed to seep through the concrete walls. The mother was praying softly. One of the younger employees, a kid named Leo who worked the Dippin' Dots stand, was rocking back and forth, his eyes squeezed shut. I just stared at the door, my mind numb with terror. Finally, just as I thought I was going to lose my mind, we heard it. 3 short, sharp blasts from the park's main horn. The all clear, the scratching stopped. The voices fell silent. Only the sound of the receding rain remained. No one moved for a full minute. Then, Maria slowly, shakily, reached out and unbolted the door. She pulled it open a crack, peering out. It's over, she whispered. We stumbled out of the first aid station into a world washed clean, but somehow more menacing. The storm had passed, leaving behind a bruised, eerie twilight. Puddles like dark mirrors reflected the battered park. Debris, leaves, branches, overturned trash cans was strewn everywhere. But it was the silence that was the worst. The usual post-storm sounds of a recovering park were absent. No distant sirens, no chatter of returning guests, no announcements over the PA system. Just silence. And then I saw him, Captain Splash, the goofy pelican mascot. He was standing in the middle of the main plaza, near the big fountain that hadn't worked in years. He wasn't accompanied by his handler. He was alone, and he was just standing there, motionless. His oversized foam head was tilted at an unnatural angle, the fixed, manic grin seeming more predatory than cheerful in the dim light. Rule 4A: if you encounter Captain Splash wandering the park alone, do not approach. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak to him. Vacate the area immediately. He is not himself at those times. He slowly turned his head, the movement stiff and jerky, like a badly operated puppet. His big, painted eyes, usually vacant and silly, seemed to fix on me. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. Then, from inside the massive pelican head came a sound, not the pre-recorded squawks and catchphrases Captain Splash usually emitted. It was a low, wet chuckle, and it sounded chillingly familiar. It sounded like the whispers from the pump room. My training kicked in. Do not make eye contact. Vacate. I tore my gaze away, turned, and ran. I didn't know where I was going, just away from that. I found Sarah near the gift shop. She was pale and shaking, but alive. Ethan! Oh my God, are you okay? Did you hear me outside the first aid station? Sarah? That was you. I stammered, confused. Yes! I got caught out! I was banging on the door! Mark was with me. Something grabbed him. In the dark, I saw its eyes. She broke down, sobbing. Mark, the linebacker. Gone, so the voice was Sarah. But the rule, my head was spinning. What was real? What was the trick? Later, Mr. Abernathy gathered the remaining staff. He was calm, his face unreadable. He informed us that Mark Davies had unfortunately decided that employment at Paradise Falls was not for him, and had left abruptly. No mention of the storm, of Code Nightingale, of what Sarah saw. No one questioned it. We knew better. As I left the park that night, the metallic scent of old pennies and chlorine seemed stronger than ever. I knew I should quit. I knew I should run and never look back. But there was the money, and there was something else too. A horrifying, morbid fascination, a need to understand, and a growing, sickening feeling that Paradise Falls wasn't just a place of rules and strange occurrences. It was a place that fed. And we, the summer staff, were on the menu.